समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या? समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar has been on a 6-day tour of the UK and Ireland. Amid dramatic turns and returns in the global order due to Donald Trump's policies on its allies and adversaries, India's quest for its strategic benefits continues. Merely a week after the entire College of Commissioners from the EU delegation came to India for deepening strategic ties across trade, defense, and technology, the EAM has embarked on a trip to the continent again. And this time to give momentum to enhancing a $52 billion worth of trade partnership with the UK. But first, a bit on how India's relations with UK has evolved in recent decades. You know, a lot has changed since George Fernandes, India's then defense minister, visited Britain in 2002. The relationship was upgraded to a 2+2 level in October 2023, and ever since, high-profile visits have taken place on both sides at a regular basis. Now, Jaishankar's present visit marks his second multi-day trip to the UK, following his 5-day visit during Diwali of 2023. Now, both the times he has spent quite a lot of time there. Additionally, in January 2024, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh also travelled to the UK, shaping key defence industry cooperation agreements. Now, coming back to Jaishankar's current visit, this particular visit follows British Trade Secretary Jonathan Reynolds' trip to New Delhi in February 2025, which was just recently, aimed at accelerating the FTA negotiations, which means that we are negotiating a free trade agreement with the UK. Now, both countries are now working to resolve outstanding issues on market access, investment guarantees, and mobility. Typically, as India wants more investments and mobility, the British side wants better guarantees for their investments and more market access into India. But at its core, this diplomatic momentum reflects bipartisan support for India and the UK, with both the Conservative and the Labour parties actively engaging in strengthening ties with New Delhi. Through these strategic engagements, both sides will assess various facets of the comprehensive strategic partnership, aligning their efforts with the 2030 roadmap for India-UK relations. Now, following his UK visit, Jaishankar also travelled to Ireland, where he's set to inaugurate 2 new Indian consulates in Belfast and Manchester. So, what does this tell us about India's evolving trade outlook? You know, New Delhi's focus on trade, defense, and connectivity with Western partners has been a key priority for the Modi government in recent years. Now, the rationale here is clear. India wants to further capitalize on its highest trade surpluses with the partners such as the United States, the European Union, and the United Kingdom to compensate for high trade deficits recorded with China and Russia. The reasons for these two trade deficits are different, but at the same time, these are India's highest trade deficits. Now, what has happened is that during Donald Trump's presidency, India's trade surplus with the US has come under scrutiny, and may I say, graceless scrutiny. Controversial statements by Trump have led to the US decision to impose reciprocal tariffs. This has come despite India's early diplomatic outreach to the new administration and agreeing to reduce trade surplus with concrete deliverables such as lowering key tariffs on US imports and buying more hydrocarbons as well as more military equipment. However, the current push for FTAs also reflects a shift in India's approach towards deeper integration into global supply chains, aligning with its growing economic stature. So this marks a departure from the government's, and when I say government, I mean the Modi government's 2014 policy, when it paused most FTA negotiations and scrapped the existing bilateral investment treaties, citing their lack of benefits for India. Now, at that time, the focus was, if you remember, was on Make in India, aimed at strengthening the domestic industrial base. But now, the renewed enthusiasm for FTAs shows a recalibration of the strategy. And what is this recalibration? It is about balancing domestic industrial growth with global competitiveness. The government's pragmatic approach seeks to enhance market access, facilitate investment, and address India's historically low FTA utilization rates when compared to developed nations. From an international perspective, this shift signals a departure from India's long standing import substitution policies, attracting global attention. Now, that said, in some Western circles, Make in India is still perceived as a protectionist trade strategy. The best example can be given from the United States. In 2021, the United States Trade Representative criticized India and India's policy of Make in India as a challenge for bilateral trade. Yet, the recent push for FTA suggests India's increasing willingness to engage with global production and supply chains. So, what does this tell us about India's trade with European partners? Now, a notable milestone in India's trade strategy has been the recently concluded Trade and Economic Partnership Agreement, or the TEPA. Now, TEPA is its first FTA with advanced economies. The agreement was signed in March of 2024 with the four non-EU countries, also called the EFTA countries, that comprise of countries like Switzerland, Norway, Iceland, and Liechtenstein. Now, TEPA is structured on a simple quid pro quo, and that is why it has worked. India opens its markets in exchange for substantial investments from these advanced economies, particularly Switzerland and Norway. TEPA also stands out for its inclusion of remedial clauses, offering a more balanced framework to keep it fair to both sides. But TEPA has just been the beginning. India is currently negotiating two more FTAs, again with European partners. One is a multi-tier FTA and a bilateral investment treaty with the European Union itself, which, despite political momentum following the EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen's visit to India, faces, I would say, some technical challenges. Now, while both sides aim to conclude the deal by 2025, its current form appears too rigid to be finalized without modifications, and we'll see what those modifications are. Now, in contrast to the prolonged EU and EFTA negotiations, both of which have taken many years, trade talks between India and the UK are relatively recent. They were first initiated in 2020, which was just 4 years after Brexit. Successive Conservative governments, right from Boris Johnson to Liz Truss to Rishi Sunak, and now the Labour, headed by Keir Starmer, all of them have supported the negotiations, and it shows the UK's interest in strengthening trade ties with India. Another crucial factor behind India's focus on the UK is coming from remittances. In 2023-2024, India earned about $120 billion from remittances, surpassing its foreign direct investment earnings of approximately $75 billion. Now, given that UK has been one of the top sources from where India earns its remittances, strengthening overall economic ties with the UK aligns perfectly with India's strategic priorities. But trade is not all. The second aspect of India's strategic relationship with the UK is the defense industry cooperation. Now, although it is not the focus of Jaishankar's visit this time, it is a robust pillar of the 2+2 format and adds meat to our bilateral ties. In 2022, India and the UK had set up a joint working group on strengthening defense industry collaboration. The following year, the UK issued its first open general export license in the Indo-Pacific region to India to shorten delivery time for defense procurement. There is much more to defense industry cooperation that I will talk about some other time because, like I said, it's not the focus of Jaishankar's visit this time. But despite the two robust pillars of trade and defense, a striking contrast emerges whenever Jaishankar visits Europe or the UK. And this is the spirit of open discourse. Now, his visits are often marked by candid, unscripted exchanges, such as the interaction at Chatham House in London, where his sharp wit and pointed remarks resonate widely. And this has earned him admiration both at home and abroad, and especially on social media. Recall most of his famous statements. Europe has to grow outside the mindset that Europe's problems are world's problems, but world's problems are not Europe's problems. And, the list of such statements is pretty long. And yet, this openness is notably absent when the European counterparts visit India. Now, for instance, during European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen's recent visit to Delhi merely a few days ago, only a single engagement with the strategic community took place, where open interaction and any conversation was reportedly cancelled at the last moment. In thriving democracies, open dialogue should be a mark of democratic vigor. Therefore, making an effort to increase space for such open discussions in India will be a testament to the evolving democratic ethos of our times and also to our commitment to democracy, isn't it? Now, a few remarks on historical baggage, lingering friction versus strategic pragmatism. Now, despite the progress I mentioned above, skepticism lingers, and there is good reason for that. India-UK diplomatic relations have often been entangled in political controversies, diverting attention from the broader imperatives of defense and economic cooperation. New Delhi has strongly pushed back against the BBC's critical portrayals of India and the growing Khalistan influence in UK politics, viewing them as unfair and misrepresentative. The recent security breach involving Jaishankar by a Khalistan extremist has once again sparked controversy in India, reviving concerns over these lingering issues. Now, for strategic trust to stabilize, the British side must walk its talk on these long-standing concerns from New Delhi. Statements alone are not going to be enough. And despite deep alignment on several strategic fronts, India-UK relations have often underperformed because of these reasons. The shortfall is partly rooted in a complicated colonial past, but as Jaishankar himself has repeatedly pointed out from several platforms, India's strategic discourse must move beyond ingrained anti-Westernism. The pursuit of national interest must be shaped by pragmatism rather than the shadows of history to ensure that policy decisions reflect the realities of an ever-changing world rather than the weight of the past. I will be back to discuss India's national interest in an ever-changing world order of discontent. Stay tuned.